Okay, good morning, PhD students. This is a historical date for Polytech, first time PhD. So you will be recorded in a Polytech history. So welcome to the PhD program. Today I want to do three things. First, I want to give you a big picture of what the PhD compared to USA, compared to UK, Europe, and compared to Africa. And I have 4 PhD students currently supervising in Africa, 2 in Ethiopia, 2 in Rwanda. So that also give you some idea. You need to find your supervisor. Your supervisor don't have to be living in a Bishkek. You can find someone in Seoul, someone in New York. You can have international faculty members. So I want to give you all this information to you today, show you some sample papers. I earned my PhD from USA. I went to school called University of Pennsylvania. And after graduation PhD, actually I got my PhD while I'm working at Boeing manager, airplane making. So I have industrial experience and education. After my PhD, school asked me to teach there because they were looking for a professor who can link the education and industry together. So I began to teach at the Wharton Business School. You know that school? #1 business school. So I became professor there. And after that, after retirement, I came here. I've been teaching at AUSA, MBA, for 5 years. You went to the AUSA? So, are you teaching there? So I taught MBA program at AUSA for 5 years. So I supervised the students' research several years. So I know the industrial context here. And also I have an IT company here. So I do a lot of different things. And I have 2 PhD students in Rwanda and 2 in Ethiopia. I do online supervising. Sometimes I go there and meet them once or twice a year. This is how I felt. Your PhD calling is very higher calling, in my opinion, different with the master's. So your PhD has to have some academic challenge, academic challenge. And that's not all. You have more. There's a calling for society and community and nation. So what I'm saying is that your work has to be blessing community and nation. And if you look at what my PhD student is doing in Ethiopia and Rwanda, they have a problem with pharmacy, medicine. And their research is focusing on how do we deliver this pharmacy to each village and community so people life will be saved. It's very high calling, isn't it? So I'm honored to work with them, to help them. So I will challenge you, think about your PhD, what benefit am I giving to other people? Okay? Can you translate it, summarize it briefly?
Есть студенты, которые не включившись в работу, и они, знаете, очень большая проблема доступа к лекарствам. Вот, и они пытаются помочь обществу через свою работу, чтобы каждое слово имело доступ к лекарствам. То есть каждая работа должна быть просто, а она должна... Пользу должна. Да, пользу приносить обществу.
So first, let me give you a big picture of a PhD that happened 3 or 4 years, hopefully not 10 years. Talk about what is really PhD program, and then there's an important 7 steps you have to go through, and you have to know what that is. how long, and also how long it should take. Yeah, so this is a big pictures, and this is very important to have a good understanding. So what is a PhD? Usually it takes 3 to 4 years. If you are good students, you can do it in 3 years and or 4 years. Mine took 7 years because I was part-time. I was working manager at Boeing, so I didn't have a lot of time to do PhD. But during the research, company gave me a time full-time to come to finish the PhD. But overall, it took 7 years, long journey. You will do the research and present a dissertation, and some country like USA, UK, Africa also require coursework needs to be done. So each department we have an academic course requirement you have to meet. But some students comes in, they already have a coursework done, and that student can finish very quickly. So some academic work needs to be done. In some countries, they accept the dissertation as a portfolio of publication. So in my case, I published 3 papers, and they call that PhD. So when I wrote a dissertation, I put 3 papers together, and here, I'm done. So instead of 1 paper, you need to publish paper, and this is good experience. And that's one way to do it. These people, another thing you have to think about is the language. Is it going to be German? Is it going to be English? Is it going to be Kyrgyz, Russian? Question is, where do you want to publish your paper? What journal? Usually PhD level, you have to go international, means English. So it's a school, you have to think about it. What are the publications we're going to do? So these students in Africa, they study English very hard. And each year I see their English is getting better and better. It's now publication quality. So PhD journey, there's several component and milestone, and depends on each school. And but no matter what school you go, there's 7 steps you have to go through. You have to prepare the research proposal, and then once this proposal is accepted, then you jump into the literature review, reading the many papers, and then you actually conduct the research. Very sensitive screen. And then at one point, you need to upgrade from being PhD students to candidate. You're not a candidate yet. So you're students, and then move to the candidate. And I will talk about how we do that. Okay, you need to remember that. Then you will do some teaching, perhaps go to the conference and do presenting paper. That should be part of a PhD experience. And then you write it, and you defend thesis. It's called Bifa Bose. Bifa Bose is dissertation defense, and that's your final activities. So these are the 7 steps you have to go through. And I will talk about each steps briefly. Research proposal is really kind of a application process. So are you already accepted into the PhD program? That means you should have a proposal already done. Have you done proposal? Okay, that's good. And then in this research proposal, you need to have your goals and objectives already defined for your program. Okay? And then explain how you intend to complete your PhD. Should be in the proposal. And this is in my opinion, based on my experience, this is a very important step. If you don't do this right, you can waste your next 2-3 years. After 2-3 years, you say, I need to change my topic. I've seen some students doing that.
Вообще процесс подачи заявки на PhD состоит в первую очередь нужно подать заявку. Когда вы подаете заявку, у вас должен быть источник отзыва. То есть тема ваша и цель исследования, и цели и задачи. Если у вас вот это все правильно оформлено, вы будете достаточно успешны в прохождении своей PhD. Если нет, то в любом случае это достижение втором ответственном году обучение говорит, что это не бывает опыте.
Меняем, да?
This is very important. If you want to save 1 or 2 years, invest a lot of time on this one. Yeah? Literature review. It's really you want to look into what kind of work's been done in your area, and that means you will know the experts in your area, and you will know the major reference you want to use for your PhD. And this is also important work because usually it takes 1 chapter in your dissertation, usually chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called literature review, and you will spend about 10 to 15 pages summarizing what you did. And this dissertation will be kind of giving you roadmap, okay, how you want to conduct your PhD. Without the literature review, you cannot find the roadmap. PhD, the dissertation, literature review will tell you what to do, based on what other people did. Then you conduct the research. And from this point, when you do literature review, that's academic activities. But after that, you're jumping into the research. You will spend all your time just doing the research work. However, when you do the research works, you need to make sure you continue the literature review, because if somebody presents something new while you're doing research, when you try to present your stuff, someone says, I already done that last year, then you're gonna be wasting your time. You need to up to date with what other people's doing. Right? That means you have to go to conference each year. So attending conference is very important. And I just should give you a budget to attend the conference. Usually school provides that budget. Okay? So PhD costs the money. You need to have a supervisor. During the research, you need to have a regular meeting with the supervisor, and he will direct you. And when I do my supervising, I meet weekly basis or at least a monthly basis. So this is important. That's why it's advantageous to have someone in the same city, because online meeting is not same as having face-to-face meeting. Face-to-face meeting, you get a lot more out of it. Okay, this is how do we become candidates? Candidates, if you say I'm a PhD candidate, that means you're almost a PhD. But until that point, we recognize you as a PhD student. So right now you are a PhD student. So each country has a slightly different rule. So I have two students in Addis Ababa University in Ethiopia. They are currently, one student is a PhD student, the other one is candidate. But to be candidates, you have to complete the coursework. Right? For logistics, you have to have a transportation, warehouse, all this knowledge. Academic work is done. And then there's some seminar requirements. So you're attending this seminar. This is kind of a seminar, and you have to meet all the seminar requirements, and then you have to successfully defend PhD research proposal. You submit a proposal in the application process, but that's not the formal proposal. You need to have a committee. You present a proposal, and you need to get approval from that committee. So once committee approve that proposal becomes formal, and you will be called candidate. So that's how it gotta go. So usually it takes 1 or 2 years. That's Addis Ababa. USA is slightly different. We have to complete the coursework, and then we have to pass something called qualification exam. It's a written and oral exam, and usually take 1 week exams. So they examine you on 3 subjects usually. One will be analytical, the other one will be some subjects, logistic, whatever you're specializing, and some other, I forgot. But whatever the subject they give you, there's no boundary, meaning any academic knowledge in that subject will be tested. That's what PhD is. So if they testing your mathematics, everything about the mathematics will be asked. So this is a very intense exam, 1 week. I remember my exam, I was crazy. And then also you need to have some literature review work done, so they will ask you during the oral examination, and you have to pass that exam, then they will call you a candidate. If you fail, they give you 1 more chance. You have to do it within 1 year. If you fail second time, they ask you to terminate your program. They kick you out. You cannot continue. So USA University, I never seen any PhD students more than 3 or 4 years. Some other school, maybe here, they can do 10 years, but university, they give you 2 opportunities and you have to do it. Or you go to some other school. UK is different. UK, you come in as something called the MPhil. You will register as a master program, and then you do all the minimum work, literature review, complete the courseworks, and also they do bifavorce, meaning sort of a mini defense oral exam. And then once you pass that, they upgrade you to the candidacy. So question is, what kind of a system or exam process we want to have at a polytech? We have to think about it. Students to candidacy. Candidacy has a different meaning. So when you go to conference, you have a business card, right? PhD students or PhD candidate, people recognize you differently.
Объясни разницу.
В международных университетах есть разница между PhD-студентом и PhD-кандидатом. PhD-кандидат – это практически человек, который уже считается PhD, считается, что он уже один шаг выше.
Только без защиты.
Без защиты, да. В разных странах есть разные требования. Например, в Штатах они требуют, чтобы было написано интервью, и они проводят квалификационные экзамены, которые длится 1 неделю. Если, например, ваша сфера, да, технология, производство чего-то, они в этом экзамене могут сказать все, что угодно, относящиеся к этой сфере. Если вы завалитесь, у вас еще один шанс через год пройти этот экзамен, если завалитесь сфера, вы уже испытываете. Они завершают студенты-магистранты, они выполняют определенные нагрузки, подготовку проходят, делают интервью, после этого они проходят мини-защиту. После мини-защиты уже там комиссия определяет, что для становится кандидатом. И вот это очень важно, потому что если вы поедете на конференции, и вы будете PhD-студент, то PhD-кандидатам относятся лучше, чем PhD-студентам, потому что они же считаются практически докторантами.
УК это не Украина.
Нет,
Поняли, да?
Ну, это Англия.
Okay. Now, during the PhD, also you will do some teaching, go to conference, publication. This is an important PhD experience, and it depends on the school. It's different, but I want you to participate in the teaching and go to a conference and publish the paper. Teaching is like conducting undergraduate seminar and also maybe helping students in a lab, because if you don't become professors, being PhD, they will ask you as a guest speaker. Also, you may go to some other country and do the teaching. So teaching opportunity will always comes to you because you're a PhD. So having this teaching experience in a polytech becomes very important. Right? So even though you're not full instructor or professors, look for opportunity to stand up in a class, on that experience. And second thing is, I want you to attend this academic conference. This is where you're networking. Maybe you find the supervisor or the committee member, and also you will listen to papers that give you idea how you prepare your paper. Always go to a conference. And then publish the paper. Publishing is a very interesting experience. The reason I want to break your dissertation into the three pieces is that first paper is usually you present papers on a literature review and your plan for PhD. Yeah? And when you present it, you can get a feedback from your peers. And if for some reason you're on a wrong track, wrong direction, they will be corrected because you spend many years. So it's very important to have first paper, go in and present and get a feedback from people. You understand that? Right, that's very important. So engage with all this experience. Even though you have a full-time job, make a time to do this. That should be part of a PhD experience. And then writing your dissertation. And this is where you want to highlight, make what contribution your PhD is making to academic-wise and also to society. Highlight this. And that's where you want to show, here's my contribution to the humanity. Yeah? It's very important. PhD is again higher calling than just an academic. And defend the PhD at Viva Voce, dissertation defense. There will be oral examination. And usually the examiner usually have 2 or 3 people, depends on your school. 2 people, one is academia within your university. The other one person is coming from industry outside. And you will invite them with your supervisor, and they will know they probably read your dissertation already, and they will challenge you on the questions, and you need to prepare for this. Let's see. Yeah, and your supervisor will help you prepare for that. And by this time, you know this subject more than anybody, so it should be fine. So that's the 7 steps you have to go through. Usually takes a minimum of 3 to 4 years. Okay, 3 to 6 months. First thing you have to do is you have to produce something called concept note. Concept note is a summary of your proposal. It has to be officially approved by your supervisor in school. So how long they've been in a PhD program? 4 months?
4 months, yes.
4 months? Okay. So you need to get this thing done. I saw, when I talked to Ackelberg and Aziz, I saw concern, you guys don't know what you need to do. Right? So that's why I'm having this seminar. This is official documents, you have to generate it. I show you example of my students. And then within 1 year, you need to finish your literature review. You have to know who's done what in your topic, everything. Yeah? And then 2 years, after 2 years, you probably need to do most of your research work. And the third, last year is just writing and attending conference and so on. And then you have to set up your defense, submit thesis, and after you successfully pass the defense, they will usually give you 3 to 6 months to correct your dissertation. Usually people pass defense with a lot of feedback from their examiner committees. So you correct that and you submit it and you will be done. So that's a kind of big process you have to go through. Is that helpful? See the big picture? So this will tell you whether I'm on the right schedule or I'm behind the curve. Any question on this one?
I'm not sure whether you got you're going to have this review after defense. Is it the
So it's all up to Huckleberg and Aziz.
У нас будет такое, да, что после защиты дается полгода, чтобы исправить диссертацию?
У нас так. За полгода до окончания срока будет предзащита. И на этой предзащите выявляется 4-6 месяцев по процедурам. У нас предзащита проходит процедуры, и вот если есть там замечания, они устраняются. Да.
We need to, I'm going to challenge Huckleberg and Polytech to make you worthy PhD because you will go to conference, you will go to other university representing your school because you got a PhD from Polytech and quality has to be there. You know what I mean? I cannot have surgeon, medical doctor doing operating without having good experience. So if you don't have a good experience, when PhD stand up talking to people or teaching class, it shows. We cannot have that. This you need to have content, you need to have a skill for PhD. Again, PhD is a higher calling, right? So you have to commit it. 3 or 4 years, you're gonna be crazy. You know what actually PhD stands for? It's permanent head damage. It will damage your brain. So hard work has to be done. There's no other way. So let's talk about how to write a first paper, concept note. By this time, you should have a concept note done. Okay, so let's go through that. First product, official product, we have to generate it. What is a concept note? It's a really kind of it's an initial requirement for PhD, and it can be written during the application process or early in the program if you haven't done. I had one PhD student from Rwanda. He spent 2 years writing this concept note. And guess what happened to them? I mean, to him. He terminated his program because he could not put the concept together. That tells me he doesn't have a capacity or commitment to do PhD. So this is the first indication to me whether you will finish the PhD program. Without that, we will not let you start the program. Right? So you have to put this thing together. It's kind of a short version of your PhD proposal. It's not an official proposal, but it's a kind of a summary, initial thought. You put it together. I recommend usually 5 to 10 pages. I will show you example later. And I saw some students doing 3 to 4 pages, and these students revising his concept note because 3 to 4 pages is not detailed enough. So he didn't really think through this thing, and he changed the topic continuously. But if you have this thing done in a 5 to 10 pages, you know what to do. You have enough thoughts in there. Yeah? So that's kind of a page number I'm looking for. Express your idea, and concise, short, but still have enough detail that I can relate to you, I can follow you, and you know how you're gonna do it. So what are the main purpose? We, as these departments, gonna try to see it's good match your interest and the department capacity. Do I have enough faculty members to support you? So that's kind of things we have to consider. Can I provide a supervision and the mentorship for you? Do I have enough professors, qualified professors to help you? If not, how can I find it? Someone from Germany, someone from USA is okay, but we need to be thinking about that. But this is a very important point. It will save your time for entire PhD program. This makes difference whether you will do it in 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years, depends on this person. It's layout of roadmap, initial thought. So this is very important piece of papers. Okay? Yeah, so here's the steps, concept note, and then you go into the formal proposal, and then dissertation note. Invest time on this one, this become easier. If you don't invest enough time this one, you will always, you are here, but you're gonna end up coming back because you thought you're gonna do this study and you realize it, I cannot collect the data. There's no really supervisor I can get it. So you come back to you changing topic. I was gonna study food industry, eh? I can't get the data. So I go to the pharmacy industry. I can't get the data. I can't find someone to help me. So I'm changing topics. But if you spend a good time on it, you know how to get it done. No wasting time. Yeah. Can you close the door?
Should we, before maybe this concept, should we do more or less talk about
Yeah, I will talk about that. So typical question you need to be asking is this one. Let's go through one at a time. What is my topic? That's why I ask you this one. Do I have a good topic? Why is it interesting? Who cares? Is it someone's interested in your study? Yeah. The research gap. Do you know the research gap? That's where the literature review has to be done. And literature review is reviewing all the works done before you. And when you look at it, there is a gap. Someone didn't do this one. And that's what we call gap. And I'm going to do this one. So do I know this research gap? If I know how I'm going to solve this gap, yeah, that should be captured in. That means you need to know the subject and do some initial literature review. What is your contribution? What is the expected outcome of this research, and how is it going to contribute to academia, politics, Kyrgyzstan, Central Asia, or whole entire humanity? Think about that. But I'm trying to kind of enlarge the scope of your research, but also at the same time, I'm cautioning you, the research, don't try to solve a national and world problem, right? Because you only have 2-3 years, so focus on it. And all these solving world problems, you can do that after PhD, and somebody's going to pay for the work. But PhD, you want to get it done as soon as enough. So scope should be enough for PhD and get it done quickly. Can you translate that?
Основное, да, чтобы ваша работа несла какой-то вклад, и один из вопросов, это какой будет вклад моего исследования. То есть вклад может быть очень маленький, некоторые начинают рассматривать его с точки зрения всего мира, да, цивилизации, но не стоит на это обращать внимание, то есть ваше исследование должно быть в масштабе достаточно, чтобы вы его могли закончить 3-4 года. Если вы думаете глобальные темы, там, вы будете решать вопросы общего человечества, у вас не будет времени на это, и этим вопросом вы можете заняться после того, как вы защититесь, и уже там немножко добавить. Я раз захотим, да, масштаб, да,
самое важное, задавать себе вопрос, кому моя консультация, мое исследование будет интересно, кому нужна будет. Да, как говорят, да, почему я должен читать твою статью, когда вы пишете, да? Кому ваша работа будет интересна, кому она нужна, вот с этого начинать.
Перед тем, как делать концепт мод, о котором я говорю, нужно сделать предварительный анализ методов и найти вот источник разрыва исследования, да, то есть уже методологии, да, и ученых есть этот разрыв, нет информации, нет исследований, и тогда в этой области вы можете делать план.
Okay. Who will be my primary supervisor? This is important. Depends on who you find that you can get it done very quickly, or it takes a long time. Who is my supervisor? You have to know this already. Right? Find that person. If you can find a kind of a very famous and effective and done a lot of work in this area, it would be good. But sometimes they are really busy. So think about it then. You have to get that person. He will save you 1 or 2 years if you find that person. Find that person. What are my reference? The literature, when you do literature review, find a good one paper. And when you read that paper, at the end of the paper, they have a reference. So that will lead you to all different papers. So find the good major papers. And then we can dive into the whole discourse. Okay? Publication, what journal, what language? This is something you have to think about. Is it going to be English? A lot of work for you guys. Yeah? Take English classes, continuously. Business writing, technical writing, practice. It will come soon. You guys speak Russian, right? Russian and English is very close. You will pick it up very quickly. My students in Africa, initially when I met them, they didn't speak good English, but now they speak good English and they write it. When I look at their paper, it says, I like it. It's very clear. You can do it. And if you do PhD in English, your horizon open up whole worlds before you. You can go to Africa, teach. You can go to America, Europe. But if you only do Russia, you're going to be limited, CIS. Think about that.
Have you our PhD accepted in the United States?
Yeah. Okay.
So it is.
They will accept your PhD as in a CV, but soon you will be tested. We are in action. And if you don't perform the surgery, it will show. People are not going to respect you. They will never ask you again to teach another class. Understand? PhD is content, skill. You need to have it. You cannot just give somebody money and get a degree. PhD is higher calling. You have to satisfy yourself. You have to have skills because it shows. It shows. You stand up, speak 5 minutes, people know you are a PhD or not. Right? So there's no shortcut. You have to work on a PhD. PhD, permanent head Danish.
No matter which university you do PhD, if you are a professional, you will be accepted everywhere.
And this comes back to us. That's why we need to keep the standard and quality in our quality PhD. So what are the typical format? It's different universities, different, but these are the kind of 9 things I'm looking for in a concept note. First one is title. Title is very important. I will talk about that in a minute. Background, statement of problem, and then goals and objective of your study, research question that you're trying to answer, and then preliminary literature review. So you need to have some literature done already to write this paper. And then how you gonna solve your research gap? Method has to be laid out. Not detailed, but you need to have some big pictures. How are you going to do it? Is it cross-sectional survey, or are you going to do analytical modeling, or are you going to design some simulation using software? This kind of a thing is to be in there. Yeah? And then what's going to be your contribution, academic-wise and community, social-wise, community-wise, perhaps. And then you need to have a reference and the bibliography at the end of it. So that's about 10 pages. I'm looking for. So you should be done this thing within 3 to 6 months. Title. First thing, we spend a lot of time on a title. Title may have a variable. Variable is something dynamic and changes, and you try to address that variable. And you can show the relationship between variables. Like people's income and the living quality. It's variable, isn't it? So you can have a description of this relationship can be turned into the title. And title, this should be short, 15 words. And you can have a title and subtitle goes with it. Background story. Historical history of the topic globally and locally. So if you're doing some mining, I will address the mining company's activities in maybe globally, what happened in Africa, South America, and so on. But the locally, Kyrgyz-wise, Bishkek-wise, we don't have much mining in Bishkek, but Kyrgyzstan-wise, you have to also address. Find out what other people have done. This is very important. Don't be embarrassed by repeating somebody else's work. You will not get a credit for that. And how do you know? By literature review. Gap. Finding gap is going to be your challenge. If you are in an IT technology area, iCloud, blockchain, these are the kind of area moving so fast. So be careful when you work on this thing. You may be studying 2 years, but somebody already addressed this issue. Then you have to go back, write another concept. So kind of find out gap. Contribution. Yeah, here we go. So you need to do some literature review to write this paper. Some literature review. I hope we have some good system access to the electronic database. Do we? School? Or published? Yeah, we should have access to the all international journal electronically. If you don't, we need to invest the money and make that happen. No? So that's
Этот вопрос решается, доступа к базе Скопуса. Заложено в этом году финансирование у политеха будут.
Yeah, it's very important. Right? And I will show you also one paper, my students, how he did a literature review. It was first publication, came out very nicely. I will share that. So background story, then statement of problem. Okay, this is very important also because that's kind of why you're doing this research. Description of issue. What is the problem you're trying to solve? And then that issue, why is it important? academic-wise and also social-wise, you're trying to address. Yeah? That's seminal problem you should have. And what method will be used should be nicely captured in a tight statement. And then goals and objectives. The goal, usually you want to have one goal for one PhD. And it's kind of a really broad statement of what you're trying to accomplish. One goal. And one goal can have many elements to it. And that element can be turning into the objective. So we will have, objective is a very specific detailed task you're gonna do that help to achieve goal. And this will be done by step, and usually 3 to 4 objective is good. Remember SMART, that's specific. The measurable. Measurable means you know when it's done. It has to be measurable. It is a number or length. And then achievable, it's realistic. And then also time, small objectives, 3 to 4. So here's the problem. Can be problem in a pharmacy or production, manufacturing or maintenance, whatever that area. You find the problem from the literature review, and then that problem will help you to establish the goal of research. Yeah? And in order to accomplish my goal, I'm going to have several objectives. Each objective will produce activities I have to do. Maybe survey, or conducting cross-sectional interviews, or designing some analytical model, whatever you do in this kind of a project management and achieve objective 1, and then following objective 2, and usually your objective 1 can be 1 publication. Objective 2 can be 2nd publication. And that's how we usually attack this thing. Yeah, I said already. And so you kind of want to do this in a kind of sequential, yeah? You may want to do objective 1 before objective 2. Otherwise, you're probably repeating yourself. That's why next month, I will do another seminar on project management. So there's several activities in a PhD, and how do I establish the project management schedule such a way this thing is done sequentially, logically, and how do I manage this? So I will do another seminar on that. Research questions. Also, you need to have research questions in this concept note. Basically, this is the kind of a question I'm trying to answer. By answering this one, I'm finishing my PhD. So what are the fundamental research questions I have? And think about how you're going to answer that question. And here's the scope. I said that PhD is a higher calling. You need to address not only academic and social wise, but also we want to finish PhD in 3 or 4 years. So scope has to be reasonable. Don't try to solve the whole nations and world problem. Contributing is okay, but don't try to solve the problem. One example, Jalalam is my PhD student in Ethiopia. He's trying to build the information technology system to manage pharmacy, all the drugs coming into the Ethiopia. Supply and demand is mismatched always. So he want to have a IT system show the visibility so he can have a clear match. And initially he submitted a concept paper addressing whole entire Ethiopia. And I said, no. This will take years because you're surveying, interviewing people in a whole entire Ethiopia will consume so much time and money. So I convinced him to do a certain region area, like Chuyu region, Osh region, instead of whole Kyrgyzstan. So I reduced his scope quite a bit. So now his PhD is doable in 2-3 years. So these are the kind of things we do in a concept paper. So research question needs to be there, and then I want to get some idea about these subjects, and in order to do that, you need to have at least read a few papers, maybe 1 or maybe 5 papers. Read it. By reading that paper, make you smart, and you are thinking about this, and you have knowledge about these topics, and you know the experts in this area. And also, this will help you identify the gap. This gap has to come from the literature review. So that means don't spend a paper that's more than 3 years old. We are in a very dynamic area. Things changing very quickly. So if you're reading somebody's paper more than 10 years old, the gaps you find in the paper is already addressed. You understand? PhD is moving very fast. So look for recent articles, no more than 5 years old. And the proposed method you're gonna do. Yeah. So method is a kind of it takes a lot of thinking, and these are the kind of question if you ask, it will help you. So let me go through this. Is my research gonna be involving quantitative data or qualitative data or mixed? Two different things. Collecting this data can be very expensive and time consuming. Am I going to use secondary or primary data? Primary data is that you collected. Secondary data means I just collected and I'm going to borrow his data. Think about that. And the source for your data. If you're working for some government issue, am I going to be able to get this data from the Ministry of Finance? Are they going to share? If not, you probably end up changing topics. Right? Do I need to get a clearance from the university for ethical clearance? All my PhD students in Africa, they get an ethical clearance from university, meaning your research is not damaging somebody else's reputation or profits, anything like that. And school has to be okay on that. Do we have that process in place, or do we need to? That's something we have to think about collectively. This one, I struggled with this one quite a bit because I had my master students, we could not collect the data, so we had ended up changing topics. Can I get the data? I have my PhD student in Ethiopia. He's doing cross-sectional research. So he's interviewing hundreds of people, and he hired 30 people, send it out, collecting interview data. So that's very expensive. So you have to think about that. Data is very important for PhD. What's this? Yeah. Will you use external assistant for data collection? This is something. If your PhD is supported by some organization, you need to budget your PhD program. And usually most of money is spent on here, collecting the data. Some students spend 5,000 euro. Some students spend 30,000 euro collecting data. And going one conference in the USA or Europe will cost you somewhere around 3,000 euro. So think about this thing, budget. It costs you money, and look for some support. And that should be in a concept note. So concept note tells me clearly what are you gonna do, what's the schedule, and how much it's gonna cost. It has to come from the concept note. Yeah, how will, so what I'm gonna do, data. what kind of a, do I need to do analysis, and what kind of a software I'm going to be using that too. Because this software may cost you money to use it. All this thing has to be captured. Yeah, if you have one variable and you're trying to determine effects of that variable with another variable, meaning you're trying to define the relationship between these two, that usually require quantitative analysis and perhaps a simulation modeling too. My PhD was this one. I wrote a software to model whole entire US transportation system. And then I introduced the stress. Stress is can be created something like earthquake or a war. Then you have to shift the supply to one area. So you're creating stress. And by doing that, I was able to identify bottleneck position in a different city. So let's say we want to send so much material from east to west, and you go through all the transportation node, highways and the train and all that. And then because of a particular infrastructure in a certain city, the amount it's going to flow is limited. We call that a bottleneck. And if you find the bottleneck, we can propose to the government saying, next 10 years, we want to spend the money on developing this city, enlarging capacity. So that's what I did. So it's kind of a capturing relationship between variables, and then that takes analytical quantitative work. But then again, if your research is trying to understand the phenomena, much like a social problem, and then maybe do cross-section research, interviewing a lot of people, collecting quantitative and qualitative data, that will be okay. Yeah. So it depends on what area you go and what are the research areas. Contribution. This is the area you want to talk about what my work is contributing. And by thinking about this one, my contribution is like applying existing idea to some new area. So you can take techniques developed from the food industry, you apply to medical industry, maybe. That's okay, that's PhD work. And another one is investigating some existing issue in a new location. So you're trying to solve a transportation problem developed in China somewhere, and we can apply it to the Istanbul and different cities. That's okay too, different location. New theory, new technique is always welcome in a PhD. So this is a worthy of a PhD tackling issues, yeah? Different with the master's. Reference, there's a slight difference between reference and biography. Reference is something you cited in your report specifically. And the bibliography is not only cited, but something you kind of related to it. Use some general information, then you want to include it in there. So that's not important really. But you need to follow through the international formatting, referencing style. You can follow Harvard referencing style. There's many different styles. Okay? Final thoughts on writing PhD concept. PhD note, concept note is that it's first step. The first step really will force you to think. It's not easy to write a concept paper, but you have to do it first step, and you have to invest time on this one. And there's a mini proposal, but it has a kind of some detail in it. It should be short and concise. And another thing you have to identify is you need to know your supervisor already at this point. You have to identify that person because your supervisor has to approve this concept, no? Do you have your supervisor? Okay. And supervisor sometimes will have a committee you need to establish a committee, not just one person. Depends on your school. Our experience is 2 is too short, 4 is too many. I see supervisors arguing each other and students saying, what about me? And 3 is a good number because your PhD is going to tackle into the many different subject area, and we don't find the one person experts on every subject, right? So we need to have maybe 3 people look for established committee, and your concept notes should be approved by that committee member. So let me show you some example. And then we'll do some QAs. So this is a concept note prepared by my students in Ethiopia. He's trying to develop end-to-end health commodity supply chain data visibility. So he want to build an IT system, more like an ERT system for healthcare, in the case of Ethiopia. So in this paper, he already has a supervisor. He's a local supervisor, I'm an international supervisor. We end up saying 2 is too little, so we end up adding another person in some area. And he has an introduction section. This is kind of talking about the background. Yeah? And then he has a statement of problem done nicely. And then he goes into the more kind of describing the issue. All this come from the literature review, so he done quite a work at this point. And he has a research question. So this is kind of what he's trying to address in his research. And here is the objective, general objective is goal, and then he has a specific objective, supporting objective, and this will turning into the task. And he talks about method. He didn't go into the detail. Right? He just say, "Oh, I'm thinking about conducting cross-sectional survey." That's good enough, but at least he thought about how we're going to approach. You don't have to be very detailed. After listening to your topics, you already know how you're going to approach this one. A layout, and what are my contribution? Outcomes going to come out, right? He doesn't have one paragraph, right? But he at least thought about it. And he has a milestone, how I'm going to do all these things, right? By when. Schedule. He also has a budget. Okay, I'm going to be needing this money. And actually, we're supporting his budget. Not me personally, but German Foundation is giving all this money. And then he has a reference, all these things already. Look at his reference. Now, concept paper, to write a concept paper, he already read this many papers. Yeah? So that was his concept paper. He wrote it about a year ago. And we signed it, approved it. He's so now he's on a good path. And I want to show you his first paper he presented. Oh, let's see. So this is a first paper he presented last year. This is a, I need to use mouse. Good. So that's his first paper title. It says a systematic review, meaning he done literature review, and from the literature review, he's saying what I learned from the literature review. That's what it is. That's the first paper on the whole entire literature review he's done. And this probably paper will become chapter 2 of his final dissertation. But he presented this paper at a conference, and I saw him presenting, and he got the feedback from the colleagues already. So he checked the several things. I'm on the right path, and also I'm doing something not other people's doing already. So he kind of gets sanity checked and good input already. But what I want to show you is that, yeah, it's been published. So a lot of things is repeated from the concept paper already. So once you write a good concept paper, you can take most of the stuff into the first paper. But look at this one. He did a literature review. He had a certain topics. He identified 412 articles, papers, and also 47 papers. So from that, almost 450 papers, is kind of selecting down which paper is really important for me. Right? And then he ended up with a 13 major paper became really foundation for his literature. And that's kind of a process you have to go through. And sometimes he rejected paper because of it's too old or different subjects and so on. Right? So that's kind of a selecting process you have to go through. Also, he also presented this, I was impressed with this table in appendix. So he put a summary of each paper he saw. Right? Who is it? What study method? How did they design the research? Some papers done modeling, analytical modeling. Some papers done cross-sectional, meaning interviewing people. Some people done analysis and modeling, all this one. So he summarized it and method they use, where is the studies located, it's Africa, USA, and then what industry, and so on. So he really summarized all the entire paper. So looking at this one, I am convinced that the final 13 paper he selected is good paper. But it also tells me he knows what has been done completely. So this was his first paper, it's good paper. And if you can publish, if you can come to this point within 1 to 2 years, I think you're a very good process. So, yeah. So he done electronic. He didn't read all the papers. There's electronic search you can do. If you put a keywords, it comes to you. And then some paper you don't have to really read. You only have to read its abstract. Then you get a good idea. So that you have to screen them kind of into it. But he summarized all the papers. So we looked at a concept paper. So we did 3 things today. We saw the big picture of a PhD process, what's going to happen 3 to 4 years. The first thing we did it. So hopefully they give you some idea. Second thing we did is we looked at a concept paper, first products you have to produce. And in order to do that, you have to identify your supervisor, and later on who's going to approve that paper. That's an official document we need to have. And third thing we did is we saw some sample concept papers and first papers. Right? So I know she has a question. I will come back to it. So is that helpful in terms of what you need to do for next 3 to 4 years? Yeah. Sure. Good. When I done PhD, nobody gave me this briefing, so I was kind of, where am I? But I will put this thing onto some place so you can go back, take a look at it. Okay? Now let's do some Q&A questions.
источником информации.
К концу этого семестра я с вас требую концепт нот, чтобы написали. Развернуто.
It's supply chain management journal. Yeah, I forgot the
Нет,
name.
начнете сейчас писать. Закрыть первый год по концепту. Очень хорошая идея, я думаю. И это. Иначе время пролетит, вы не успеете.
It's like a guideline for us.
Yeah, you know what to do now.
Yeah. Now we know what to do. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Professor, sorry, a question about data collection. As you said earlier, sometimes.
Can we have one question at a time? No, please. No. He's asking a question.
As you said earlier, sometimes it's very difficult to get some data, for example, from the Ministry of Economy. And personally, my work is connected with it, so I need to gather some information from salaries and so on. Are there practices that uses not real data but mock data?
Mock data?
Yeah, mock data. It's not. No. So we should do our take this on papers on real data, on real data.
So another way to do it is if you have a difficult time collecting the data, then another way to do it is you do simulation. So I had a entire USA transportation model. Right? So input can be simulated. So not specific data, general trend can be simulated. And you design the phenomena and you can kind of produce your own data.
But this data is called mock from simulated data. It's not real.
Yeah.
So
simulation, yeah. We use a Monte Carlo technique. There will be good as real data. So there's a specific techniques you can use. Modeling can be very difficult.
I see.
Yeah, I wrote a program. It's a Fortran program, 30,000 lines. So it's I spent a lot of time on that. So, but collecting actual data is a very effective way to do it, but it's expensive because you have to interview people, survey. Sometimes you can get data from the internet survey, but sometimes you have to visit them and ask a question. Yeah, most of study done in Africa, they do cross-sectional interview data. They're collecting data from it. Yeah. So data they have in a government can be very difficult to get or incomplete. So you may end up doing a lot of cross-sectional research. So budget your PhD programs, collecting the data, attending the conference, and also school needs to consider is if you are asking international supervisor, they don't do this service free for you. They charge you money, and they charge you a lot of money for each annual year. So that has to be also budgeted as well. So I don't provide my service to my Africa student free. Somebody's paying me a lot of money for that. So you have to budget that too. Right? So PhD is expensive.
Все?
Any other questions?